we meet again, one last time. Despite the title, Adventure of Lolo II is actually the 6th game in the series. For the first 4 games, it was the Agerland series. And then for the last 2, they adopted the US title. But because of that, the US games and the Japanese games are quite out of sync. It's pretty common for the Famicom Adventures of Lolo 2 to be equated with the NES Adventures of Lolo 3. But because the Japanese releases had 3 previous games worth of levels before the US got a single game, the US versions have always been out of step with the levels. And that's the case here. So while the wrapper that the game is in is identical between those 2 versions, the actual game content is different, so they're not the same game. And that's the last time I'm going to have to explain that. The plot for this game is that a villain has turned everyone in the kingdom to stone. Well, except for Lolo and Lala, who are hanging out somewhere else. So now they have to push their way through 110 levels of puzzles. There's an overworld in the game, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot. You still have to complete all of the puzzles to continue, so it's more that you're choosing what order you want to do blocks of them in. You can also switch between Lolo and Lala by hitting the A button while you're on the map screen, and hitting start brings up a password so you can continue from where you left off. One new feature for Adventures of Lolo 2? A tutorial. They walk you through a set of very basic levels to give you an idea of how the mechanics work. The basic gist of it is every puzzle is just on one screen, and your goal is to collect all of the hearts. When you do, the treasure chest opens, and collecting the treasure inside opens the exit. Many of the stages are populated by monsters, and understanding their behavior is key to figuring out how to solve each stage. The primary mechanic in Lolo is block pushing. And you're not just pushing the blocks out of your way, you need to use them to entrap the enemies. I didn't see any new enemies for Lolo when I was playing, but later on there are bosses that you have to fight. A new addition to the game. So you'll encounter familiar faces like the snakes that just sit there, the skulls that don't do anything until the treasure chests open and then will chase after you, the Medusa heads that kill you instantly if you cross their line of sight, the demon that's basically a mobile Medusa head, these green guys who will chase you down and then go to sleep to block your path whenever they touch you, the walls that will chase you down but don't go to sleep when they touch you, and these dragons that start out asleep but wake up when you collect the last heart and breathe slow-moving, dodgeable fireballs. Lolo and Lala have one primary weapon to use against enemies. Sometimes when you collect a heart, you'll get the ability to shoot bubbles twice. An enemy in a bubble can be pushed around, and if you shove them into water, they'll make a bridge for a short time. Shooting a bubbled enemy again knocks them off the stage, and they'll respawn a few moments later in their original position. And that's pretty much everything you need to know to play Adventures of Lolo 2. This is one of those series where they have a small number of building blocks, but combine them together in a ton of different ways. And since this is the finale of the Lolo ni Agerland series, it's only natural that Adventures of Lolo 2 be insanely hard. The first group of levels is just a warm-up, and then they start tightening the screws. Even in the second level block, they start introducing puzzles that are based on some really tight timing. I got through to the 4th block of puzzles, and some of those were really making me have to think. This game is intended for the people who played through all of the Agerland games and the previous Adventures of Lolo, and then walked away thinking, well, what do I do next? You could pick it up as your first Lolo game, they do have the tutorial after all, but I think you're going to have a rough time of it if you do. One positive change they made with that increase of difficulty is the elimination of lives. Now you just keep retrying forever until you pass the stage. If you get stuck, you can hit select to just restart the stage, and if you want to back out to get your password, you can pause the game first by pressing start and then hitting select. In Japan, this doesn't seem to be an especially popular game. Almost nobody talking about it, and it seems to be mainly notable for being one of the more expensive Famicom games. Roughly around 5,000 yen for a cartridge-only copy at the moment, assuming you could find one. This isn't quite the end for Lolo and Lala. there is one more original game in the series for a Nintendo platform, and that's Adventures of Lolo on the Game Boy. And of course, Lolo and Lala will appear one more time in Famidaily, though in a very different context. My thoughts on Adventures of Lolo 2 is that it's a good game, but it's good because the other games in the series are good. It does feel like a capstone to the series. At this point, they've taken it as far as it can go, and this is really the end, for better and worse. The puzzles aren't bad, it's just that after approximately 800 of them, the good ideas have kind of been used up. Which means that if you're a fan of the series, you'll want to play this one, but if you haven't played any of these games, you should jump back to one of the earlier titles.